Okay, we're live in full effect. Thursday, heat wave in Pittsburgh, and we're going to bring you the heat today. We're going to bring you the heat.
I'm ready.
We're gonna pick on DJ today.
Awesome. Rock and roll.
So today we're talking about, and we've been really getting into this, and we had a really good expert mentors live with our coaches yesterday, and they started talking about what your time is worth, right? So we talk about this a lot, and we break it down into numbers. And I think the first thing that we need to talk about is just tracking. You got to track what you're doing, your activities. You got to track how many calls you make every day. You got to track how many appointments you set, how many appointments you convert, how many closings you get from a particular activity. If you can't track, then you don't know how to break down your numbers. So it all starts with tracking. Today, though, we're going to take you through the potential of being a killer listing agent, strictly outbound prospecting to expired listings. And there's some guys around the country who are this person. Now, these numbers are going to seem unreal, and we'll break them down. We're going to do a little bit live. We had a couple we were running through it a little bit first, just to see what was actually realistic. And when you see the numbers, it's pretty stupid. The numbers are stupid, how much you can actually make doing this if this is all you do and you don't allow distractions and other activities kind of take away from your time. So DJ, any thoughts, I guess, first on time and time management and kind of where time can get wasted sometimes, or what you find? Because DJ's your typical he's your sales guy, right? So really great on the phone, really good talking to people, really good in person, really good communicating, closing listing appointments, not good with time management. Most salespeople, right? So the discipline of time management and the discipline of doing the same thing every day and the monotony of it is where most salespeople fail, because quite frankly, that's just not something that they're good at. You deal with a little bit of chaos, and the up and down of it, I think kind of is something that most salespeople would have, I would say. If you have a combination of the two, somebody who's highly disciplined and a really good salesperson, really good on the phone, they're a killer. They're the elite, right?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you said is I don't know, for me personally, it's having somebody else sometimes kind of tell you, and that's why coaching is important, right? Like it's like you're in denial. Like I know when we crush it and have crazy good months, you're not worried about anything. The deals are flowing, they're closing, right? And then after all the dust settles, then it's like, where's my pipeline? It's always right, and that creates the old roller coaster.
That's where we're at right now, man. This is why we're looking at it right now, because everybody's busy, everybody's running around crazy, chicken's head cut off, and it's July. In September and October, you're not gonna have shit for a pipeline.
Yeah.
Right. You're not gonna have, if you don't concentrate and figure out how to manage your time right now and spend it on dollar productive activities, in 2 months, 3 months, you're gonna feel it again.
Yep.
And we've had this happen too many times. So what we're going to look at today is, what is your time worth? We're going to break it down into a dollar figure, right? Dollar productive activities.
Before you jump into the nitty gritty, I just want to say this, and I know we've talked about this in other calls, but this is extremely, extremely important. The why part that you said before we jumped on the call, right? That has to be so clear. And Jay and John now, they always talk about like the clarity report and the clarity part. You got to get super, super, super clear on that and the why. And what John said, here's what resonates. When John decided to do that first Ironman, right?
Mm-hmm.
His why, he had a very strong why, and it was personal and kind of, family related, to kind of do for himself, for his dad, right? Once he committed, here's a guy that athlete in good shape, but still a full Ironman, that's a daunting task. And to be disciplined enough to do the daily activities. And honestly, like with this job now, and I relate it to like football. I remember the year that you and I were at Gannon, our sophomore year, probably best shape of my life. I was deliberate every day about tracking what I did every single day, doing those things. And that's really this job too, is it's easy to get busy and not prospect. It's so easy to not prospect. And if you're not prospecting every day, which is just like hunting, your family's not going to have any food in the winter. So you got to be stacking food every single day, every single day. So I just want to say before you jump into the details is you got to get super clear on the why. You got to be disciplined as hell, and you have to just make yourself do it. Nobody's going to do it for you, period. So with that being said, let's roll.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to break down. So for DJ, right, the goal for the day is 3 hours on the phone per day, which puts you 15 hours a week, right? So I'm going to bring up our spreadsheet here. So what we're going to look at an expert listing agent, and we're going to look at how much time is spent, how many contacts need to be made, how many of those end up being converted, let's just say. And we made some adjustments. I had closed transactions I wanted to put in here, appointment set. So for DJ right now, it takes him 20 contacts, and by contact, it's the right person, right house, right? Not a wrong number. Even if it's this is Jim, F off and hang up the phone. That's the right person. That's a contact.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It takes you typically 3 hours to talk to 20 people on average, based on the numbers that we know. Obviously, some days that's going to fluctuate. Some days that's going to be less. Some days that's going to be more. There's going to be days where you're going to talk to 4 people in a row and you're rolling, and you might set 4 appointments in that 3 hours. There's going to be another day where you might not.
Yesterday, 11 people, 2 appointments.
11 people, 2 appointments, 2 FSBOs, right?
Yep.
He's calling FSBOs and expireds, which I think, depending on the season, that can go up or down. So that gets you 1 appointment. Your average price point, you're around 250-ish, I would say, on a listing, and it might even be a little bit higher than that. From a listing standpoint, we keep a higher than average commission, and we charge an admin fee. So for us, the average commission is a little bit higher on the list side than it is on the buy side. People are paying less on the buy side, and people are cutting commissions. We generally don't. Occasionally we do if we have to. We'll make it work. But there are a lot of deals we make 3.5 on, which is why this averages out to 3.15.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say every closing essentially is worth $7,875.
Yep.
Now, you've got to calculate your broker commission. You can see here I've got a couple of other columns, and I'll take you through that as well. If you're getting whacked over the head, right now we're earning 100% of our commission at EXP, so it's $250. So basically, after 8 deals per year, right now DJ is at 100% split. Is basically how it calculates down with his split structure. So 8 deals, I mean, what we're talking about is nothing. So you can subtract 8,000 from the bottom of this at the end of the day. So what we're looking at is 3 hours to generate 1 appointment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that now, after looking at these numbers for a long time, you typically will take 3 out of 4 of those for one reason or another. Potentially you don't get it. Maybe it's way overpriced. Maybe something happens. They just end up not listing. So 3 out of 4 of those. So essentially what we're looking at is it takes you 4 hours, because you're only going to take 3 out of 4 of those to generate that income.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of those is going to be wasted. One of those appointments is going to be wasted. So when we look at DJ's dollar per hour to generate income, it is a baffling $1,906 per hour. That's how much DJ's worth to our company, to our organization right now. So it almost makes you sick when you think about it because it's like when he's calling you wanting to talk about Michael Jordan baseball cards or shoes, every 20 minutes he talks about Michael Jordan baseball cards and shoes, he just lost $500, $700, right? Like it's sickening or crazy when you really think about it. But it's like all of us think about how much time we waste on pointless phone calls, dealing with things in a transaction that we don't need to deal with at that particular time that take us away from the things that we should be doing. Like it's at the end of the day, it's pretty crazy, honestly.
Yep.
And let me just make sure my calculation is correct because we just made a quick change to it. So really 4 hours is spent to generate a listing. We've already calculated for that. So now we know that only 75% of those will close. There's going to be some that just don't close. So I'm gonna fix this on the fly here. So DJ's worth $1,900 an hour when he's on the phone, and when you end up calculating kind of how much of that closes, he's worth $1,430 an hour. Now we got to take into account his listing appointment and drive time, right? So we've already calculated the loss of time, essentially with the extra hour that it takes for the people that you never got. Like realistically, it's 3 hours per appointment that you take. We add an extra hour to that because we know it's only about 75% of that is what actually converts. So for us, it takes you, let's say you got to go on a listing appointment that's a lot further away. It takes you 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes back. You spend an hour there with the people. You walk out of there with a signed listing agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you 2 hours. So realistically, it takes you 6 hours to close a transaction. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
6 hours for a $7,600 commission.
Mm-hmm.
Real time, that's worth $1,271 an hour, which is a crazy number, right?
Yeah.
Crazy number. So let's say, let's look at your weeks. Let's say you take 6 weeks vacation. You're off, Christmas, you're off every holiday, basically every, whatever, you take 6 full weeks off that you don't work. So you only work 46 weeks a year. And let's say that you actually worked 30 hours a week. And by work, that means 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, you work, right? That means 3 hours on the phone, or essentially it means 20 hours on the phone, another 10 hours going on listing appointments, which is 5 closed listings. That puts you at 1,380 hours worked per year times 1,200. The potential income is $1.7 million, which is, again, sickening when you really think about it. So let's say, for example purposes, that you really only work 12 hours a week. You're worth $700,000 a year. And really, let's think about it, right? So you've got 12 hours, you only work 12 hours a week. You call 3 hours a day. You go on, let's call it 4 hours a day, 3 days a week. So that means you set and close 3 listings every week is what you account for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 3 listings per week. You work 46 hours a week, or 46 weeks. You close 138 listings that year times $7,625, and then we call it times 75%. Some of those don't close, let's say. So there's your $700,000. So when you really break this down, it's sickening how much money you can actually make if this is all you do. So for us, it's like, well, how much time should you be spending dealing with replies to inspection, stuff like that? Like, these are the time sucks. But realistically, if you're really productive and you're only working 30 hours a week, and it's highly leveraged activities, and you're time blocked and it's actually converting, you still have 10 hours a week to only work a 40-hour week to make $1.7 million. And the other 10 hours is spent on, reply to inspection, talking to sellers, dealing with that kind of stuff.
This resonates. Do you remember when we were in Florida at the mortgage company, we did that honest kind of calculation on our time per day? Do you remember how crazy the results were? That you didn't want to believe it. Like when you really broke down,
mm-hmm.
and you felt at the end of the day like you worked super hard, you were tired, and then you really looked back and it was like 2.2 hours on internet, social media.
Yep.
An hour doing whatever, nothing. Like, you're right. I mean, it's that old saying, like, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And you look at these guys like a Warren Buffett or a Bill Gates, and you look at their schedule, and they're just like, what they can accomplish by lunch, most people don't do in a week.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. It really, it's simple, but yet seems so daunting or hard to do.
Yeah.
But again, even our buddy JR, like, I think about, like you say about him, like, he's laser focused from 9 to 3:30 or 4, and then that's it. Like, he's laser focused on during those times,
Yeah. So, really, when we're looking at these numbers, it's like, and I think I feel like there's a mistake in here somewhere, but it doesn't matter. I mean, who cares if it's 1.7 or 1.5 or 1. Like, it's just it's a stupid freaking number, right? Like, so it's like, but the idea is, what are you worth per hour? And if you're looking at your calendar, right? One of the tricks that somebody had told me was put a dollar amount beside every activity on your calendar, right? So let's say you got a 3-hour time block in there, and we know that your time is worth essentially $1,430 to generate a listing appointment that is going to close. That 3-hour time block is worth almost $4,500. So if you don't hit that time block, what are you spending that time on that is more important than that $4,500, right? Is there ever any other than your son? Is there ever something that you're doing in business that is going to make up for that $4,500?
No.
Never.
And there's the scary thing that I was talking about when you just say it that way. It makes you sick to your stomach. Like,
right.
Here's that when you say it that way, if I think, well, today I missed my call block, or I called for only 30 minutes. If you tell yourself I just lost $4,500, that's enough to make you sick.
Yeah, and like we had to come up this past couple of weeks, right? You had like 9 replies. There was problems with all of them, right? They all have problems. I mean, they're all a problem. I mean, every reply to inspection, there's something wrong with the house. The buyers want it fixed. That's not a problem. It's just real estate, right? Like, it almost always works out, and if it doesn't, oh well. You spending 3 hours on that to save a commission that's going to work out 95% of the time, whether you spend those 3 hours then or you talk to them at 4 o'clock, you're still going to make more money when you're making those phone calls. Like, you don't serve any purpose to that outcome that can't be handled at that point in time. Very rarely.
Yeah.
Right. So realistically, it's like, when you're really going to break down your calendar, you need to break down what your time is actually worth. So maybe, maybe you were highly unproductive last year. Maybe you're a buyer's agent. And I think what we're going to do next week is go through the buyer agent side, because I think it's less dollar productive because there's so much drive time involved, but it's still a crazy number when you look at it, when you really have to time block, and you see how much it's actually worth to convert a lead as opposed to the driving and the contracts and all that stuff. But when you really look at your calendar, that has to go in your calendar first, your highest dollar productive activities, which for you, being somebody who's an expert on the phone, I would call you an expert at this point in time. There's people better than you. There's a lot of people worse than you. You could be better, but you're pretty freaking good. And we know that these numbers are accurate. And so really it's looking back at, well, how many blocks are you actually hitting on a weekly basis? And if we really got super disciplined, and I would say even for me, this is where, like, if you want to look at moderate, when I was calling these, I'm not the sales guy that DJ is. So maybe let's say I'm even average at best. That means I've got to put more time in. If you don't have any business, you're just starting in the business and you're completely below average, but you want to be a listing agent and this is what you want to do and this is the path. Say it takes you 6 hours when it takes him 3. You're still going to make a boatload of money if you just put the time in. Numbers always win, right? And that's why an ISA works for some people. You're never going to be DJ, but if you've got somebody putting double the time in, that's all they're doing is the outbound prospecting, the numbers still work.
That's
right?
true. You can win just on time and effort. I mean, it's crazy. I know I've said this story before, but it's still, I think about it like a day like this. When I was in Florida at that mortgage company right before you came down and started that, the guy who brought in that big bag of Skittles every day, who did not talk to anybody, didn't take bathroom breaks, called for 4 hours, got up and left. I watched him make $500,000, and he did not worry. Like you said, he didn't worry about the deals that didn't close, all the other stuff. I mean, he was a good customer service guy, but the point being, he was hyper-focused on one activity every day without fail and made $500,000.
Yep.
And other guys were making way less, and they were there in the office for 10 hours, 12 hours, always saying, what's Bill do? How does Bill do it? Bill didn't speak to anybody. Ever. He just worked and left.
Yeah. I had a couple of people I worked with in the mortgage industry. Mike Alexander was like that back in when I was at WCS Lending. I mean, I was some big freaking hitters there. I mean, Craig Stelzer and Matt Weaver were both in the top 10 in the country for mortgage transactions processed this year. They were both in there. Mike Alexander, he was probably the most efficient guy that I've ever met. He's like a JR. He would come into the office. I would never talk to Mike Alexander at the office. I would hang out occasionally with him after, like if we'd have happy hours. We played flag football that one time. He was the guy that played receiver at Clarion.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
Mike Alexander was a killer. Huge volume. He had an assistant. He came in every day. He hammered all his calls out. He was the first one in the office, but he's gone at 2 p.m. every day. Went to CrossFit, went to the beach. Never worked after 2 p.m. If you didn't get him by 2, he was going to respond to you first thing in the morning. That's how his clients knew it. If you needed something as far as the transaction was concerned, they were talking to his assistant. He was gone at 2 every day. But he was there at 7:38, started his day early. But you didn't go in his office. The door was closed. He didn't bullshit. You never saw him in the lunchroom. You never saw him talking to people like getting coffee. Never. He just is super efficient. Time productive. He made more money than everybody, but I think 2 people at that company. That was like a 200-person mortgage shop at the time. He was a killer, but it was super efficient time, no time wasted. And honestly, I have the shirt on. I have the Jocko shirt on. Discipline equals freedom. He was gone at 2 o'clock every day, right? Where the rest of us were in there till 7 or 8 o'clock saying how busy we were. He did more than us in half the time just because he was efficient with his time. and he concentrated on the highest dollar productive activities, which allowed him to have a full-time assistant doing everything for him that he didn't want to do. So he just went in. He was really good at calling. He made all the calls. He had somebody else doing the stuff that he sucked at, and that's something that we got to look at. Maybe you got to look at with you. It's like once we get that time down, then we just have a dedicated person that handles all that.
A lot of it, when you say it like that, though, most of the reason why most people never hit it, it's their limiting beliefs. John's talked to us about this too. It's like we almost self-sabotage ourselves, I think, a lot, saying we don't think it's possible. Like you throw a chart up and say, well, that's 1.5 million. It's like, nah. Honestly, when I first saw the number, I'm like, no, that's not. So you start by that mindset saying that's not possible. That's wrong.
Yep.
And so it's just like you said, like when the mind part and the clarity part, like you sent me that video in Jocko 2 weeks ago or whatever, right? You know about like relationships and how he handled like all those things. It's practice. That's also a skill to learn and practice and get your mind right. Most of us we see the memes on Instagram, but that's it. You don't practice it. You don't really believe it. It's just you feel good for a second. You keep going about your day like you usually do.
Yep.
But, with all these times right now, like that just going on, and honestly, I was thinking the other day, just hearing about this crazy COVID thing again, like a couple people that, we know somewhat well, and saying, well, a lady I used to work with at CDW, her and her husband are in the hospital and they're not doing good. And I was thinking about time, right? It's like they now are in a situation they can't control. Every day we wake up, you got a new day, a new path. It's that whole, like, if not today, when? Like you just.
Well, yeah. And it all breaks it back to your why, right? Do you want to spend 70 hours a week working, or do you want to spend 30 hours a week highly productive and make double the money? Because the other way, it's not making you $1.7 million. I know it's not making me 1.7. Like I know, and I've really started to realize this now, having my kid, because I don't want to spend time bullshitting about stupid stuff during the day. Because I take care of my kid in the morning. My wife sleeps in right now because she's not working. So I'm up at 5 with him until I start work at 8. And then she's got him all day. So by the time I'm done 5, 6 p.m., she burned out and I'm ready to take over. So like, do I want to waste 3 hours of my day talking about something that isn't going to get me the time in the evening that I need? That's going to make me not be able to finish up work until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. No, I'm not doing it anymore. That's just where I'm at. Like, so it's like, now it's really time to dive in deep. Like, where am I spending my time? Is it dollar productive activities or is it wasted time? And really time blocking that. And it's the same thing with you. It's the same thing with everybody right now in real estate, because you think you're busy and you may be, but you're probably not when you really break it down. And I think I think that's the task. That's the goal, is really break down your calendar every day, track it every 30 minutes. What did you do? Even on a 15-minute interval is what we did back in the day. And it's eye-opening. How much time did I waste on shit that didn't get me to my goals when I could have been spending it with my family, or I could have made more money because I could have been doing something that would have generated me income?
It's the scariest shit ever. Like that, honestly, if I've learned anything from what you're just talking about, and the best person at it, it's John Kitchens. Like for him, his calendar and his day is so structured, and I mean everything, right? To be able to train like he does, to be a great father, a great husband, a great coach, and still have Sundays for the planning day. Like him and his wife, they're on the same team, they're on point, and he's the guy I look at and say, like, that guy has it dialed in. But if he gets off the structure, and you're sure, if he's not disciplined, his life would be chaos.
Total chaos. The amount that he gets done. He's just way more productive. He doesn't take phone calls during the day. You call him right now and say, I had a question. I just want to talk. He's not going to answer. He's not going to text you back. He's not going to email you back till the end of the day. Maybe. Might be first thing in the morning. But he's disciplined because he knows that the time that he's spending is worth more than answering your email right now. And we've now been trained that he's going to respond to me in the morning. So we consider his time more valuable than ours. And that's a lot of the thing. Every time you take a phone call that, a client, like an inbound call, and you put something else aside that you're supposed to be doing to take that phone call, you've just reduced your worth for that hour. So you've reduced your time. So do you respect somebody that doesn't take your call and will call you back when they have free time, or do you respect the person who will pick up the phone anytime you call them because they're always available, right?
It's always the person who doesn't take your call.
Yeah. So, moral of the story: if you're starting out, if you're in it and you're burned out, if you've been doing nothing but buyers and you want to be a listing agent, if you and we're going to go over the buyer agent side next week. I mean, it's still going to be very eye-opening how much time you waste on the buy side. I'm sure it is. But from an expired listing, from an outbound prospector, even if you suck, if you have the discipline and you can make it through those days, the money's there and the time is way more valuable. And I mean, quite frankly, you're $1,000 an hour worker. That's your worth. $1,000 an hour. Yours is worth more than that. So every time you think you don't have time and you can't do it and there's something else that's more important, put the dollar amount to it, and that's going to get you highly more productive, efficient, and make you a lot more money and give you a lot more time freedom. Right?
Yeah. Good shit.
All right. Good stuff. Appreciate you going through that with us today, and we're going to hit some buyer side next week and how to be more efficient, what your time is really worth. We'll break it down on a couple of different, like if you're doing 30 transactions a year, 40 transactions a year, most of them buy side, how much time spent showing, like doing certain things, like how to be more productive with your time, build your schedule in so that you can continue to progress. Otherwise, I think most people just plateau. 30, 40 transactions you don't want to do anymore because you're working too many hours a week. So we'll hit that next week. All right. Thanks, guys. Hope that was